Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative. Now we'll begin with opening statements, and we'll begin with General Marshall.
We're going shortest first.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Steve Marshall, and it's my honor to serve as Attorney General for the state of Alabama. Alabama law, like the laws of many states, empowers me to represent the state's interests in court and to enforce the state's consumer protection laws. ESG poses unique challenges to Alabama's energy consumers, as well as many of our state's leading industries, like steel, iron, coal, agriculture, timber, and oil and gas. But it's bigger than just Alabama. ESG is a clear and present danger to consumers and to our democracy. An unelected cabal of global elites is using ESG to hijack our capitalist system, capture corporations, and threaten hard-earned dollars of American workers. Since President Trump's election, the global elites have formed at least 10 alliances dedicated to implementing radical ESG plans. These alliances threaten consumers by limiting output, raising prices, risking retirement funds, and creating anti-competitive conduct. They also undermine our system of government because unelected elites are making policy decisions outside of democratic processes. Groups like Climate Action 100 and Net Zero Banking Alliance require their members to coordinate on business activity to meet ESG standards not otherwise required by law. This private coordination is designed to accomplish what could not be done through normal democratic processes or the free market. ESG requires companies to forego otherwise profitable economic transactions to achieve woke social policy. These global alliances hurt consumers by breaching fiduciary duties. Those entities entrusted with Americans' money have a fiduciary duty to act in their investors' sole interest by maximizing returns. Yet ESG acolytes have openly pledged allegiance to causes over profits, often failing to give consumers adequate notice or any meaningful say in the decision to virtue signal with their hard-earned dollars. ESG is not good for American workers. The retirement savings of many Americans are invested, advised, or affected by an entity that's participating in a net zero alliance. Woke agendas should not impact how retirement dollars of workers are invested. Americans who are responsibly saved for retirement should be confident that their money is invested in a manner to maximize returns and not further the goals of agenda-driven investment managers. ESG also hurts consumers by increasing energy prices. To accomplish their net zero goals, these alliances must work to phase out fossil fuels. Energy output is then limited, which results in higher prices for consumers. And in states like Alabama, under these policies, consumers would only face higher prices, but also a lack of energy supply altogether. ESG threatens America's energy independence and national security. America achieved energy independence during the Trump administration, but ESG weakens America by constricting foundational economic sectors like energy, such that we now must beg foreign countries for oil. ESG also makes America dependent on products made in China like solar panels and electric battery components. This threatens to give China and other bad actors a competitive advantage and leverage against the United States. These alliances also hurt consumers through anti-competitive conduct. Alliance members appear to be conspiring and combining to restrain trade and commerce by colluding with other members to reduce competition amongst themselves and coordinating restricted investment and action towards specific companies unless ESG policy objectives are implemented. And let's be clear, ESG activity is subject to antitrust laws, as the Biden administration has publicly confirmed. ESG threatens America's democratic system. In this country, important policy decisions are supposed to be made through the process set forth in the Constitution. Congress debates issues and passes legislation. The President signs and enforces legislation, and the judiciary reviews any challenged legislation. The global elites are using ESG alliances to circumvent our system of government by shifting power to unelected elites, both inside and outside the United States, who are not accountable to American voters. Global elites are advancing ESG through unlawful and anti-democratic means. But Republican attorneys general are fighting back to protect consumers from harm caused by woke ESG policy. Republican attorney generals have launched investigations in the Net Zero Banking Alliance, Climate Action 100, and other companies, commented on policy proposals, warned companies to not violate the law, and initiated litigation where warranted. Republican attorneys generals are defending Americans from these global elites and radical ESG activists. We appreciate the attention this committee and members of Congress are giving to ESG. This conversation and debate is one that must be returned to you, our nation's policymakers. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time of being here today.
Thank you.
and I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this, pick a number, get online, and kiss my hand.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Backstory Podcast number 155. What the hell is ESG?
Thank you, man. I always think of ESG. What the hell's ESG?
And to help us sort through all this, we have Mr. Rip, consumer advocate down in Fairhope. How are things down there tonight, Mr. Rip?
The flowers are blooming.
Yeah, and Mr. Mosley, our journalist in residency up in Birmingham. What's going on up there?
We've had some rain. Weather's looking good. Yeah, all's well that looks well.
All right. So, Attorney General Steve Marshall on his Twitter page said ESG poses unique challenges to Alabama's energy consumers, as well as many of the state's leading industries like steel, iron, coal, agriculture, timber, oil, and gas. You know, all the big polluters.
And I don't disagree with him at all on that.
I don't either, but it's bigger than just Alabama. ESG is clear and present dangers to consumers and our democracy. An unelected cabal, I love that he used my word, cabal, of global elitists is using ESG to hijack our capitalist system, capture corporations, and threaten the hard-earned dollars of American workers. So ESG, Paul, is environmental, social, and governance criteria, a set of standards for a company's behavior used by socially conscious investors to screen potential investments. So, you know, if you're some guy that's running a hedge fund and you have an opportunity to invest in a wind farm in Wales or a new coal-fired power plant in Uganda, where are you going to spend your money?
That sounds like a Fairhope project, ESG.
It does sound a little like a well, and so anyway, the World Economic Forum does have a website, and it's actually pretty cool and interactive. This little wheel here, you can click on each of these modalities, and it'll bring up a new little page or whatever. It's a theory of economics, and you know, the World Economic Forum is kind of like the Google theme from about 10, 15 years ago. You know, don't be evil. You know, if we can bring some good feelings to our investing, let's do that. But the bottom line is, these people don't make decisions like that. They're bean counters. Their job is to make money for their investors, right? Not to engage in social engineering or whatever.
Well, I do have an investment account. And when I sat down with my broker, you know, they asked me those questions. You know, are you open? Do you want your money in, you know, these environmentally friendly investing? You know, the fund manager is still going to try to make money, but there's just things he can't invest in, like oil or gas or something. Of course, Brandon, I want as much money as I can possibly get out of my retirement money.
Waste management.
Yeah, I mean, whatever can make Brandon money, I'm good with. But, you know, that is an option that investors, you know, are increasingly, oh, yeah, let's do that. And then, you know, their fund is over in a different fund. And where it sort of bites, and this is what Marshall's worried about, is, you know, the people that, you know, check that ESG box, if we've got to develop a new, you know, coal field someplace in Walker County or an oil field off of Orange Beach, that their investment money's not available for that because they have, you know, they're following the ESG principles and they're out. And so you have to be like Brandon that don't care, you know, if you want to do those kind of investments.
Okay,
you know.
So the Austrian school theorizes that subjective choices of individuals, including individual knowledge, time, expectations, and other subjective factors cause all economic phenomenon. Austrians seek to understand the economy by examining the social ramifications of individual choice, an approach called methodological individualism. That differs from other schools of economic thought, which have focused on aggregate variables, equilibrium analysis, and societal groups rather than individuals. And the father of all this is Ludwig von Mises. And Brandon can tell you about the Mises Institute down there in Auburn. They got, it looks like the damn Parthenon of a building, isn't it? I mean, it's a fine facility.
Yeah, they have a nice facility, but a lot of these economic theories are 100 years old, and they're not thinking in today's term where so much capital is managed, by people like BlackRock, or Merrill.
Vanguard, those are the big three.
Yeah, Vanguard, most people's retirement funds are tied up into things like their pension fund, if they're fortunate enough to still have a pension fund, or they're in 401ks. So, there's only a handful of very wealthy corporations that manage those funds. So, historically, the amount of influence that one person, even a rich person, has over the market was a whole lot less than a few fund managers would have in 2023.
Yeah. Instead of talking about millions, we're now talking billions and trillions.
Yeah. I mean, $100 billion global investment fund is a small global investment fund.
Right.
Okay. So there was a conference in Birmingham a few weeks ago that the Mises Institute put on. And I think, Brandon, isn't the guy on the right and the big guy with the beard, they both work for 1819 News, right?
That is correct.
And this character down on the end, we're going to get to him in a minute. He's a professor at Troy State in their economics department. And the guy that is finishing up his comments is the editor of 1819 News. Is that right?
He is the founder, CEO, and president. I'm not throwing stones at Brian, but
he's no journalist.
Where'd they get the money?
I mean, I would lump him in with journalists. I get worried when journalists become experts in economics, because that's not really our area.
Well, once you listen to this guy for a little while, you'll figure out it's not his either. So let's just let's kick it off.
Smarter than you. I've reached that point in my life right this moment. I'm not a think tank guy, so they brought this redneck up here to balance things out a little bit. So
why?
There you go.
I've got a mic. Is it on? Yep. Well, ESG is going to affect, of course, Alabama and every state. There's a reason why the Who Cares Wins conference with the United Nations, again, government of Switzerland et al., targeted financial institutions and capital markets as the place to start, because that's where all capital flows are. You look at the industries that make money with money, and you realize that if we can control all capital flow, then we can control everything beneath that framework. So that's why people like executives at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, et cetera, big accounting firms, big investment firms, were all invited to Who Cares Wins, and that's why they are invited to the World Economic Forum as well. Alabama has made some efforts to push back, nothing like DeSantis in Florida or Texas and West Virginia are doing a lot to push back, but we did sign on to an anti-ESG alliance. 18 states signed on to that. Our Attorney General, Steve Marshall, has joined a lawsuit against the Department of Labor, which was considering, it instituted a rule to allow for ESG 401k investments. But will ESG affect Alabama? Of course, it affects everybody, and everybody that has investments. I mean, I think the best thing we can do is, ring the alarm bells, because if ESG weighted portfolios continue to underperform on the market, I think money still talks. I think when people start seeing that they're not getting returns on investment because their mutual fund manager or BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, their asset manager, if they have money with those entities, or if it's the state pensioners who are having their state pension funds invested in ESG weighted portfolios that are not doing as well as other portfolios, then you're going.
Okay, Brandon. So, do you think I need to worry about, the retirement systems of Alabama investing all my money in ESG stuff? Of course not. But these people are all telling you that this is something that you need to be afraid of, not just aware of, but afraid of. So, Paul, here's where the money's coming from. So, 1819 News was launched as a separate entity of the Alabama Policy Institute, right? So who's the Alabama Policy Institute? The Alabama Policy Institute is a nonprofit conservative think tank located in Alabama. According to the organization's mission statement, it is dedicated to influencing public policy in the interest of preservation of free markets, limited government, and strong families. So what kind of an apparatus do you think we're going to have to make sure that all investments don't have any ESG kind of related calculus put into that investment?
I don't know. That whole thing looks like it may just backfire totally in their face. I think.
Don't you remember the time when the Republicans were laissez-faire economists? What's going on here? Why is it that the Republicans are wanting the government to get involved in investments and banking?
Well, the liberals got involved and they put pressure on companies to adopt, socially conscious policies. And so now, since that started from the left.
Bud Light.
Right,
I'll give you an example of why you don't do that. Bud Light. But keep going.
Yeah. And, we've got this goofy deal where we used to have, we used to have government sort of in its own lane, as the regulator and the manager, complete control over the military and defense and foreign policy, and they kind of let the corporations do what they wanted to do to a point, as long as they didn't, bust any unions or, create too big a mess.
Oh, and
but now what we've gotten is, as the ideological divide has got bigger, and more people are politically charged in their lives, you have people on both the left and the right in the political spectrum now starting to throw weight, like our Attorney General, into the corporate governance sector. So, ESG was started by the left to influence how corporations conduct their activities and how investors invest in corporations that align with their political agenda.
Okay, well, this guy's talking about this guy is Mendenhall, is this fella's name, Dr. Alan Mendenhall, and do you know the definition of a Tottism? So it's the extreme authority of the state over the individual citizen. So he is giving a lecture in Auburn back in March, and he says that ESG is the route to the state taking over everything. Now, coming up with policies to combat ESG seems to me to be the government getting itself involved in people making individual decisions about how they want to invest their money. And again,
it's not people making individual decisions on how to invest their money, because again, Brandon's not actively investing his BlackRock account.
Okay, well, if
BlackRock is managing that, and if you're in a fund that is following ESG principles, you're following ESG principles, and you aren't making individual decisions on
right.
Well, you can take your money out of BlackRock if you don't like what they're doing, and
Yeah,
you go put some money somewhere else.
I'm not in ESG because I want to just go after the most money, and I'm not really worried about it.
Right, and the individual investor gets to make that decision when they sit down with their money manager on the front end. I'm just telling you, this is another. Again, this is a boogeyman from the right, just like the 1619 project was from the left.
Aren't as active in their account as I am. They're out there, and it's, their money's either in a pension fund, if you're like a government worker or some kind of legacy, thing like a railroad or something, where your union and the fund managers they hire are managing your money, or you're in, like in most of the private sector.
Brandon, those people have all. Brandon, you're shit in the bed, man. Those people have always had influence over how they invested your money.
But there wasn't the ESG thing.
But there weren't people standing over here with signs saying invest in clean energy, as opposed to Alabama Power Company and all these people. I don't know how to
tell those people that are, with the signs to sit down and shut up and let Alabama Power do what it wants to do.
Okay, well, what you want to do is create the empire from Star Wars to be in charge of our lives and be in charge of our investments. And I don't want the government in charge of my investments. I'm sorry. I think they are involved enough. And the way to fight this is to take your money out of these investment firms that are doing this kind of stuff.
Put it in your own equity.
So, Paul, this Mendenhall guy, Alan Mendenhall, their little operative. So here he is, a prequel to Between Two Ferns. Do you recognize that fella he's talking to? This is Alan Mendenhall and Bill Pryor on Success Stories. And I seriously doubt he asked him about this story from.
Oh my God! Schnauzer. I remember that now. Yeah,
proven to be false. But then he's been on Fox and Friends, Bill O'Reilly. You know what I mean? He's okay. So here's his bio: English, Bachelor of Arts from Furman, an English, a JD from West Virginia. An LLM from Temple, and a PhD in English from Auburn.
And a staff attorney for Roy Moore.
Yeah. So this is what I was going to point out. All this other shit, you can just burn it to the ground when this has to be included.
Sentence.
A staff attorney for Roy Moore and an assistant attorney general in the office of Attorney General Luther Strange. So those two turds are on his resume.
Just left that whole sentence out.
Right. So what do you do? So author, lawyer, critic, professor. So he's running the Johnson Center for Political Economy at Troy University, where he is also associate dean of the business college. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he goes now. Here's the headline, but here I'm going to read this whole thing. It's just too good. The version of the Education Trust Fund approved by the Alabama Senate last week included $1 million appropriation to a Troy University program aimed at ending woke capitalism. The money is directed to the Free Enterprise Scholars Program and a new program under Troy University's Manuel H. Johnson Center for Political Economy. Once upon a time, corporations stuck to their business of supplying Americans with goods and services. The program's introduction reads on Troy University website. Today, corporations advance progressive political causes. Businesses face progressive pressures from many directions. Woke employees can create a toxic workplace and push companies to advance progressive causes. Employees and contractors face termination for being insufficiently politically incorrect. When executives embrace stakeholder capitalism, they delegitimize stockholders' ownership and the pursuit of profit, end quote. The appropriation was a last-minute addition to the education budget package presented by Senator Orr from Decatur, tacked on during the committee hearing he chaired. The line item comes a day after Dr. Alan Mendenhall, executive director of the Johnson Center, spoke to the state Republican caucus about the dangers of ESG.
$1 million speech.
Must have been pretty damn good.
You really got $1 million bucks.
In the caucus meetings, I didn't get to hear any of it.
What?
Yeah, the press is not allowed to go to caucus meetings.
Oh, well,
we're barred at the door. That's why all the decisions are actually made behind closed doors in caucus.
Right. All right, so here we go. Crazy town.
Tonight, CNN gave former President Donald Trump a live town hall forum, and he once again claimed the election was rigged and defended the throngs of Trump supporters who attacked the Capitol a few weeks later. The former president also claims this week's verdict that found him liable for sexual abuse was rigged. He also called the overturning of Roe v. Wade a great victory.
He said a lot of things tonight. KTLA's Samantha Cortese live in the news center with a closer look tonight. Sam.
Sharon Micah tonight for more than an hour. Former president and again candidate Trump spoke about key issues surrounding his campaign and personal life, refusing to back down on some controversial topics. Here are just a few of the key points from a very fiery town hall. In his first appearance on CNN since the 2016 election, former President Trump answered questions from CNN journalist Caitlin Collins in a New Hampshire town hall. Right off the top, Collins asked if he admits to losing the 2020 election.
Unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens.
The former president did not concede defeat.
It was a rigged election, and it's a shame that we had to go through it. It's very bad for our country. All over the world, they looked at it.
He also said he would accept the 2024 election results if it's, quote, an honest election. On foreign affairs, Trump was asked who he wants to win the war between Russia and Ukraine.
I want everybody to stop dying. They're dying. Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying. And I'll have that done. I'll have that done in 24 hours. I'll have it done.
Trump said Europe should be footing more of the bill, and it takes a strong president to get that to happen. He also said the war would have never happened had he won in 2020. Regarding abortion,
very complex issue for the country. You have people on both sides of an issue, but we are now in a very strong position. Pro-life people are in a strong position to make a deal that's going to be good and going to be satisfactory for them.
He did not say whether he would sign a federal abortion ban, but called pro-choice advocates extremists and said overturning Roe v. Wade was a great victory. On the economy, Trump took a question from the audience.
What is the first thing you would do to help bring down the cost to make things more affordable?
Drill, baby, drill. We're energy independent, soon to be energy dominant. This place was rocking, and then we were given a gift from China.
Another mention of China when President Trump was asked about classified documents and the raid on his estate at Mar-a-Lago.
You have the Presidential Records Act. I was there, and I took what I took, and it gets declassified. Biden, on the other hand, he has 1,850 boxes. He had boxes sent to Chinatown.
Collins pushed back on this issue. It led to this now trending moment.
Can I talk?
Yeah, what's the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to. You're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
That's an Alabama girl there.
President Biden reacted to the town hall tonight, saying, "It's simple, folks. Do you want 4 more years of that?" In the news center.
Do you want 4 more years of that, Mr. Ribb?
Nasty girl, man. That's an Alabama girl there. She's doing very good.
From Prattville.
Yeah.
Alabama grad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she lost control.
She has climbed up that ladder mighty fast.
She might as well not have been in the room. It was It was him doing his same old crap.
It was, but I mean,
the latest polling I'm seeing has him beating Biden, and it's a sizable number. I mean, polling's awfully early, and the over 18 months out, the incumbent's going to do a little bad, no matter who the incumbent is. But
we've got 4 more lawsuits he's got to jump over too.
Yeah, so the President Trump has officially signaled plans to appeal the $5 million jury verdict handed down this week that found him liable for sexually abusing and defaming writer Jean Carroll.
And I know lawyers say that you shouldn't show up and testify sometime, but that's why they found him guilty when he didn't show up.
Oh,
when he didn't show up, did he give the jury a choice?
Not really, but last podcast I threw in the whole deposition of Donald Trump, or all that they released of it. And CNN's own employees are disparaging the Trump town hall. And
yeah, they all wish they had Caitlin's job and were the ones up there instead of Caitlin.
Yeah, well, I want to be fair about this, and so we're going to watch a little something over on Rumble real quick just to show you the difference in opinions about what happened.
Make sure that future vice presidents don't do what I said you could do.
That's not what happened. You're referring to the Electoral Count Act. I've read that. There is no authority.
No,
legal experts, including Republicans,
say
that he does not have that authority, Mr. President. But I want to
why
move
did
on.
they change the law then, saying that you can't do it?
They didn't change the law. They strengthened the law because they were worried about presidents
they strengthened
exploiting.
it, meaning you could do it.
That's not what it means.
Come on, you had the right to do it.
I've missed this.
I think Caitlin thought that this was going to be her coming out party, and instead she's getting run over by a tank.
Yeah.
It's back to Georgia, Pennsylvania, and other states, Wisconsin. Which
Gerald, your prediction would have been right if she wasn't so if she wasn't so caustic.
That's true. She does come across as unlikable right now.
Yes,
just in general.
Not come back in the affirmative.
And she owns no upper lip.
Well,
you just said it pretty much. You admitted what I said was
there's
right.
a purity to her outfit.
Yes, that's true.
The right to do it.
It's called a lie.
White as driven snow.
And that's why they changed the law, taking that right away.
But a black heart.
I should note that your campaign paid for a recount that happened in Wisconsin. It actually had more votes for President Biden by the end of it.
Wasn't about recounting. That wasn't the problem. He had fake votes.
Okay, just for clarity, there are a lot of people that thought that was great and that Trump totally owned the young lady from CNN. And the fact of the matter is,
you're right, because you can go through the news channels and there's I think I get 6, and it is very interesting to see how each one looks at it
politically. And we're at this moment of time, Trump knocked it out of the park in this town hall. Because remember, his target voter is not general election voters or swing voters. What he's trying to do is to beat DeSantis in the Republican primaries that's going to be rolling around here next February. Mm-hmm. And did anybody even say the word DeSantis or Nikki Haley in the last week? No. Nope. Trump completely dominated the political market on the right this week. If Ms. Connors had some success and getting some liberal people to remember why they don't like Trump, okay, they're not going to be voting in a Republican primary anyway. His voters are in this event here are Republican primary voters. You have to win the primary with nomination to even worry about the general. And again, he's targeting the primary voters.
Right.
All right.
He's just speaking to the choir.
That's a whole different picture.
I'm sure everybody that watched The Apprentice and enjoyed him on WWF Slapdown every Friday night is going to continue to vote for him. All right, Paul.
That's a Republican primary for him.
So, Paul, give us some lagniappe. Let's start off with the overtime at the sheriff's department. That's a pretty good one.
Right. You can pick up a lagniappe. It's about the only printed material you can get now. You can get it in newsstand free, or you can get it online, and it covers politics, bars, eating establishments, tax notices in the back, just about everything now. One of the articles they got this week is time management. Deputy overtime continued despite flags. When you read something like this, you just wonder how in the hell it could be. Okay, for one, overspending for overtime at the sheriff's office since 2018 has become a rule rather than an exception, with the latest showing $921,000 in overtime payments. And then basically it's 2 officers that have got the most, and one of the officers was making almost $100,000 more than the sheriff was making. But this goes back again. I think this was a DECA as well. We were talking earlier, Brandon, about the audits and stuff. And there were grants for overtime. And they were audited and evidently reprimanded by ADECA to get this straight years ago.
Hey, Paul.
Now it's come back out again.
Have you seen like you're watching TV and they'll have the Memorial Day click it or ticket thing? That's what ADECA is giving money for overtime for those special little events like click it or ticket.
Those
for
are federal dollars. If you ride around in my neck of the woods up here in central Alabama and go through Jefferson County, you'll just be hopping along on the interstate, and then you'll go by and there will be like 2 Jefferson County SUVs parked on the interstate, chasing down motorists or Hoover. And we're, on my eastern end of Jefferson County, the eastern end of Jefferson County, you're 20 miles from Hoover. What that is those guys have all worked shifts. Their normal 40 hours for Jefferson or Hoover or Birmingham. And then they've gone out and the department has pulled down, U.S. Department of Transportation grant money through ADECA to fight, the dangers of sex trafficking and drug trafficking and drunk drivers on the highway. And so they're paying them double time to sit out there on the highway and, spend the time they would be spending at the house with the wife and kids, spend on the highway, making the world safe for motorists.
Right. But these 18 employees dragging in $1.3 million is egregious, and $6 million in overtime paid last year is a whole lot of money.
There's one Department of Corrections guy that I think makes like $170,000 or $180,000 a typical year, because he just works so much double time for them that his $55,000 or $65,000 a corrections officer gig suddenly becomes doctor money.
Time and a half, man.
Yeah,
time and a half. Sergeant Adam Austin also recorded 2,600 hours of overtime. Somebody divide that by 40, if you would, and earned nearly the identical gross amount as the other officer, $234,000. Additional review of MCSO's overtime hours clocked in 22 shows 10 deputies earned more than $50,000 each in overtime, and around 50 earned more than $20,000. If you're a taxpayer, these are the type of articles you need to be reading. This one here was by Scott Johnson. It's got a lot of very good detail in it. And, this has been going on. It just makes you wonder when this has been written about, when the ADECA has reprimanded them, when the county is on top of them about this, and then it keeps happening. Something's failing, and speaking of failing, residents call for the state takeover of Pritchard, changes to the water board. This is some people are calling it a failed state. This is by Dale Leash, and Senator Figures is trying to, work something out over there. It's one hell of a mess. The citizens are under siege. Mr. Brandon Williams told Figures, this is basically a failed state. Would you spearhead a bill to allow the state to take over the city? And, of course, the crowd kind of didn't go along with that too much, but she said, I hear what you're saying. She said, I'm willing to work with you to tackle each issue to see what we can do. In speaking with Williams, Figures accused the Pritchard Waterworks Board and Sewer Board of sabotage when it came to her attempt to allow the Mobile area water and sewer system to take over the troubled board. Specifically, she referred to the multi-million-dollar mismanagement contract the board offered to Stephen Trent right before the Mobile Water Board vote on the takeover. So I don't know what it is with sewer systems, sewer plants, garbage, recycling, but you see so much corruption in all of those areas. and obviously a lot of mismanagement. I think Brandon's point a while ago when we were talking about this, one of the things was that they were not getting the grants that they should get. But Brandon's point was, well, you don't apply for grants if you're stealing the money. And I like that reasoning. I mean, that's pretty true. The next one is A Reason to Be Proud. That's by Rob Holbert, the editor, Damn the Torpedoes. And then Golden Age is Mobile Council gives the Western residents the right to annex referendum. And after all of this time and everything, the Mobile City Council voted 6-0 Tuesday to allow referendums on the annexation to West Mobile. And that is quite an accomplishment on everybody's part. They've been battling that, I guess, for a year? And so now they're going to leave it up to the residents, and we'll see what's happening.
Yeah, the people I feel sorry about are the landowners. They get swallowed up in that lasso that, would never have voluntarily signed their property over into the city limits. But they do these referendums, and they'll find this little cluster neighborhood, and they'll promise them a new street light or their road, their subdivision get paved in exchange for them voting yes in a referendum. And then you'll capture, a big bunch of tracts of undeveloped property in your big lasso. And so you can then control that property and what it does in the future.
It really is, when you look at Baldwin County and zoning and what has happened in the last 20 years, like 20 years ago, you couldn't have got anybody to zone anything. Now you got citizen groups, panicking and having zoning areas trying to, have a little bit more control on what's going on in their area. Case in point is the golf course one that got turned down by the planning board. Thank you. That's the third time they brought it up. But, you're going to see things like this when you see overwhelming development like we're going through right now. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
In Baldwin County, if you have one landowner and he does a development and makes millions of dollars, and then over here on the other side of the property, you've got another landowner and he's doing the development and making millions of dollars, that little guy that's in between them, he's going to come for his money at some point. And that, you can turn down his plat 2, 3, 4 times. At a certain point, you've done it so many times. Well, I've submitted this plan, I submitted this plan, I submitted this plan, and you keep turning it down, and you never do find something that he's eventually going to have up a court system, and the court's going to call it an unreasonable taking of his property by not allowing him to use, the same use that people within 5 miles of him are doing, and then he'll just blow it up. But so that's probably coming.
So right now there are 3 annexations in Baldwin County by legislative act. One is in Bay Minette, one is in Spanish Fort, and the other one I think is Magnolia Springs. So typically, to be able to annex, the city limits have to be contiguous to the new piece of property that they want to bring in. And if you have one of these people like Brandon that says, over my damn dead body, will you take me into the city? They then have to go and annex by legislative act because they have right. But right now, I'm saying is
you do those two to annex in people who would never voluntarily sign to enter.
Okay, but
one of the other processes too is
because you can easily just go down and get somebody to sign his property into the city if he's contiguous and just grow it like that. But
but the referendum has to be contiguous too.
Okay, but the other method with the city is that when they reach a certain population point and their boundary lines are so radical that they leave actually islands that are, say, in the county, and the city is totally encompassing it, sooner or later those islands are going to be annexed in. I mean, it's almost, it's going to happen.
Okay, but you're missing what I'm trying to tell you.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm
These
just saying that's
large
another
property owners have gone to the legislature and said, "Hey, we want to be in this city." And as a matter of fact, Monday night, these properties they're going before the city council to have pre-annexation voting. Zoning approved, so they'll already know what they're for multifamily and general business.
Where is this?
In Bay Minette.
Oh.
For this property that's being annexed. And I don't even know what property it is because I can't get Chuck E. Cheese to send me a damn picture of these, representation of the properties related to the city limits. Well, so anyway, just something else to know that in Mobile, at least they give them a choice by voting on it. Over here, it's just, the legislative delegations taking political favor or whatever you want to say in doing this thing to these folks. So, Paul, as we speak, it is 8:00 at night, and the Fairhope Rotary Club Steak Cook-Off has kicked off. It kicked off at 7:00. It's a charity event. It's sponsored by Greer's. They provide all the meat, I think, and there's a shot of it from last year. You can see it's a pretty big event. You know who won't be there?
Why?
State Senator Chris Hutt, because that's where he got his DUI like 4 or 5 years ago. He won't return to the scene of the crime. Okay, so Brandon, you were around for this. Lawmakers passed bill to help clear way for new Alabama State House. So where are they going to build the new State House? Is it going to be on Goat Hill or somewhere close?
I had a discussion with the pro tem of the Senate yesterday on this, and I don't know any more about that than you do. What they've done is this legislation allows the legislative council, which is, leaders of the body, to make these decisions for them. I was told by the pro tem that they'll be making these decisions at the end of this year or next year. And as to whether it's going to be on the same site next, they're going to take a survey of the available land, in the Capitol complex. They could, I guess, knock down the Folsom building and move it there. Or they could buy property that's, on the edge or,
Well, let's put it this way, Brandon. Property in downtown Montgomery is not at a premium. Would you agree with that? It's not the most expensive place in the world to buy real estate. So
yeah, if the Brandon Corporation, if such a thing existed, was buying property in Montgomery next to the Capitol complex,
I'd sell my stock.
6 weeks ago, yeah, he probably could have got a really good deal. But now that we're building a state house, yeah, you try to buy anything now, and
right.
It might as well be in downtown Atlanta.
Okay, so
especially that big a piece of property.
So, do we know, is the retirement system of Alabama actually going to build it and own it, and the state lease it from them, or is the state
that
going
is
to
what
build
I
this?
would guess. That should never have been the way things are done. But there's all kinds of state agencies and commissions and boards, that are in a building owned by the retirement systems Alabama, and they lease their space.
Right.
I think the legislature might do it that way, but again, these decisions will be made by the legislative council.
On a golf course over brandy and cigars, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, they'll probably be out there at the Robert Trent Jones golf course talking to Mr. Bonner and do a deal. He just celebrated his 50th year in that post.
All right, so Paul, wow. If you go watch the Menace Symposium video in its entirety with the 1819 guys or whatever, Mendenhall eventually gets around to talking about microchipping people. Which I thought was very interesting because Brandon had made me aware that this bill came out of committee. So, Brandon, won't you fill us in on
that's actually passed on the House floor now. Representative Prince Chestnut from Selma, this is actually a Democrat bill, banned the mandatory microchipping of your employees. Your employees can still get microchipped if they want to be. That way, we've all done this in the past at some job or another, where we forget our little card to get in the building.
Right. Wouldn't it have been easier if you just had a microchip?
In your body, you just wave your little finger across the scanner, and it's hey, that's Brandon.
You know what's next, don't you? We're not going to be able to microchip our dogs. It's coming.
Well, you can have your child microchipped if you want to. You can have your dog microchipped. You can get yourself microchipped if you want to. None of that would be banned under this legislation. What this legislation bans is a corporation saying, you will have this microchip inserted in your body as a condition of working.
If you want to join the Teamsters Union, you must agree to putting this microchip in your body. Okay, Brandon, you got to tell this story from the top because a lot of people won't get it.
I read this. Holy moly.
This happened Tuesday before last. Our speaker, Nathaniel Ledbetter, was visiting the border. A delegation of our leadership was inspecting, the chaos on the Mexican border. And so Chris Pringle, who's the pro tem of the House.
Republican from Mobile.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And our one black Republican, Kenneth Pascal, had a very simple bill that I don't quite entirely understand why it was needed, but all it does is say that, parents have a fundamental constitutional right to parent their children. And we're going to put that in Alabama law. If a typical white Republican had brought this, it probably passes in 20 minutes with just a handful of commentators. But because the one Republican black man has been elected as a Republican since like the 1880s, was on the podium, with his bill, it sort of motivated the black Democrats, some of them, to just come and lambast him personally.
And that's what Wandalyn Gavan did?
Yeah, Wandalyn Gavan pretty much dressed him down.
Now, didn't she sing a Jay-Z song or something about being a
She
sellout?
quoted lyrics from a Jay-Z song. I will not say the word because a white person can't say the word or it'll be
right.
Yeah, they'll be following me on Twitter forever. But without actually saying the N-word, Wandalyn quoted the lyrics, basically telling Kenneth Pascal that when you go to you are one, when you go to bed, you are one, when you go to work, you are one, and that's how people see you, and that's how you will always
Light nigga, dog nigga, full nigga, real nigga, rich
that
nigga,
Jay-Z
nigga, house nigga, feel
had
nigga.
written about O.J. Simpson. As someone who's never really followed Jay-Z, I'm not familiar with any of his lyrics, and apparently Speaker Pringle wasn't either because he didn't gavel her down, which he probably should have.
Yeah, it sounds like old Chris kind of.
Chris was up there enjoying being at the speaker's deal, and he let Wandalyn have her entire 10 minutes.
He's up there screaming, "King of the castle! King of the castle!"
Yeah, and he's probably sitting there thinking, "Who's Jay-Z?
Who's Jay-Z?"
Yeah. Yeah, I doubt that Jay-Z is on Pringle's, his playlist.
Well, anyway,
God,
it was very
Pringle and Jay-Z.
It was very disruptive.
Yeah, and
hateful.
Pascal's poor little bill ended up getting carried over because it was taking too long. We could move on to the rest of the bills. And then, of course, the Republican Party leaped on it because, our one black Republican guy just got completely trashed on the floor of the House, and really nothing was done other than his bill died. And, there have been Republican groups calling for her to be disciplined, censured by the House, which, if you know Wallen Gavan, if she's ever censured by the House, you'll make a T-shirt about it.
Well,
They're probably selling in her district.
The one good thing that the good thing he has going for him is the song received backlash from the Anti-Defamation League due to the content it found to be anti-Semitic also. So the Jewish people don't like this song either.
That's a unique thing in American culture. If Harry and Brandon did a music video where we said the N-word multiple times,
or if I started a white power movement, you know what I mean?
Oh, well, that'd go far.
They'd put us on a list.
We would probably be rightfully banned from social media and working any decent job ever again.
Right.
But Jay-Z can do it and sell millions of songs to people of all races, and he's beloved.
Art.
I don't pretend to understand it. It just is.
There's a lot I don't understand.
All right, Brandon. So bill prevents China from buying Alabama real estate.
Oh, my God.
This is no joke.
The House Majority Leader brought this bill personally with about 30 Republican co-sponsors on Tuesday. He's concerned about China being our main adversary. And so if you're a citizen of China, or you are a Chinese-owned corporation, or are in some way affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese military in any way, you will not be able to buy a house or a farm or a factory in Alabama.
Well, now there's quite a few businesses owned by Chinese already, isn't it? And
that came up in the debate. Big one, the Mobile Chamber of Commerce red flagged this bill and hit their people up. Continental Motors in Mobile out there at Brooklyn Aeroplex, been there for
ever
long time.
I don't know when, but it's been for a better than a half a century. It got bought out by China. And there's 300 Alabamians that have very nice, well-paying jobs there. And, Leader Stadthagen told us on the floor that if, Continental Motors wanted to expand, they would have to find an American who would buy the property for them and lease it from that American for
yeah.
The rest
So
of the life.
I get it. Okay, Brandon, you read the Panama Papers, yes? How all these foreign corporations and people wanting to hide all their income from the government. They all go to South Dakota or Wyoming and do an LLC, and
Delaware has done that for like 100 years.
Right, that's because they have good business law there. But these are because you don't have to disclose who the principal members are.
Brandon, I was up at the quarry in Sylacauga, the marble quarry, one of the largest in the world. And I was reading one of the plaques, and I believe that entire quarry system was bought out by Chinese.
Yeah, and it was not in production. It had been out of production for like 20 years, and China said, "Hey, let's get in the marble business." And they bought that old, quarry, which is a lot of stuff in the state capitol is from that quarry.
Yeah, some
monuments and things.
Sylacauga White
Washington
is famous marble from Alabama.
We send trade missions all over the world, including China, to come and invest here.
Right. And you're poor.
I don't agree with much that the Chinese government is doing, but because some poor turkey was born in China, and he wants to do like most investors do, and they don't want to be tied up to one government. we're saying that the Iranians or the Russians or the North Koreans can invest in buy property in Alabama, but China can't.
Yeah, you're right. We should make the list exhaustive, man. I mean, like I said, this is more reactionary BS.
Correct.
Reactionary BS. And, if like all the if 2/3 of the farmland in Alabama was owned by China, I'd say, yeah, guys, we probably need to do something about this. But this is all knee jerk, trying to make people scared and try to, the boogeyman or whatever.
I mean, 1.2 million acres in Alabama are owned by, foreign corporations and individuals, with Canadians actually being the majority of that because they own a lot of timberland here.
So tell me about this Alabama legislature advances legislation requiring that American iron be used in public works projects. Is this more of the same stuff from the same people?
This is actually, we're making Alabama law the same as federal law. Federal law already has, if you're working on a federal public works project, you have to use American iron and steel. Alabama law had it where you had to only buy American steel. That was a little bit confusing for, some of the contractors because, in a lot of the things that we're doing, it's a state managed product, but it's got federal funds in it, especially, with this new infrastructure bill. So it's like, to make it simpler, let's just make the state law the same as the federal law. And if it's a public works project in Alabama, you're building a school or a courthouse or a road or a bridge, you buy your iron and your steel in the USA, rather than have the federal government coming back at us after the fact and doing an audit and saying you broke federal law because you bought Brazilian iron.
Well, but if they're a decent if they're a good contractor, they're doing their own compliance. Anyway.
I would think so. I would think, the general contractor is smart enough to know there's federal dollars involved in this project, and I have to go up to U.S. DOT standards and not be with whatever the goofy Alabama standard is.
Right.
But this just raises the Alabama standard in iron and steel to the same as the federal standard.
All right. Well, nothing to see here then. So
remember Ross Perot? You're going to hear a giant sucking sound. We lost their manufacturing. All of this is repercussions going all the way back to that damn free trade agreement, I think.
Bill Clinton.
Free trade agreement. He said you'd hear a giant sucking sound, and we sure as hell did. Ross Perot was right on that one.
Yeah, if you were invested in American textiles, you're still regretting that one.
So, remember last week we talked about Tucker Carlson was here in Alabama because he didn't have a job. He was at a speaking engagement in Oxford, Alabama, a population 4,000 people. So anyhow, Tucker Carlson has announced that he intends to launch a new version of his show on Twitter. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
we'll see how that goes for him.
Well, I mean, they did fire their, most popular anchor.
Well, really in the past years, we've seen a lot of popular anchors with, everybody, ABC, CBS, all of them. And then some of them were institutions and boom, they're gone. Yeah. And then you don't see them again. And you think, my God, how'd that happen overnight? But it's
remember Dan Rather. I mean, he was like the face of American news. And then he popped up once or twice after that, and then was just like gone.
Matt Lauer.
Yeah, well, with Matt Lauer, there's legal implications there now.
He had a door lock under his desk.
He was locking women in his room, in his office, and chasing them down. I mean, literally, there was a push button on his desk where all of a sudden she was just trapped there.
That's not fair. That's not playing fair.
He had the Dr. Evil button to lock the door.
It's got to be a way out.
Oh, Lord. So,
my God.
So do you know what the civil forfeiture law is in Alabama, Paul? Let's say you get pulled over. Let's say you're duck hunting and you're caught with ducks with lead shot in them.
Yeah.
So the the game warden can petition to have the state of Alabama have you civilly forfeit your vehicle and your boat to the state of Alabama, and they sell it and use the money for something else.
Right, like a new weight set.
So Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General, okays transfers of forfeited funds from Russian oil oligarch to help fund the war in Ukraine. Now, this is kind of like we're pawning the silver to pay for this war, right? I mean, civil forfeiture, I've heard of that, but damn, an oligarch's billions of dollars that we just seized. I don't know, man. Sounds like strange days. So, Paul, we've been talking about Amtrak service going back to New Orleans.
Oh, my God.
The preparations
for 4 years?
But the Mobile stop location is still up in the air. And, this is that behemoth of a maritime museum that Mike Dow runs. And then this is the parking deck for the terminal for the cruise ship. And the problem is you have a train track right here that the traffic has to come over to get to the parking deck. It's totally ignorant how this whole thing is set up. And if you go to the museum and the train comes by and stops, you could be stuck there for an extra 2 hours. And trust me,
Birmingham's the same way.
You can see that whole son of a bitch in 30 minutes. You don't need to be there for no 3 hours. So anyway, this is a logical place. There's also the old GM&O terminal up the tracks, which seems to make more sense. But, parking is going to be a big issue. So, Paul,
wow, man.
Did you hear about this?
Hear about it. I knew I worked at La Paz. I used to work at La Paz in Birmingham. We renovated the restaurant there several times. And Natalie worked across the street in the flower shop. So I had seen her a couple of times. And then when I was living in Belize, I was called by authorities asking how, if you lived on an island, would you dispose of a body, did you think? And I told them over the reef.
That's
because over the reef is the only way that you could hide something on an island. I mean, you can literally dig up every corner of the island, and they've never found anything whatsoever. And the last place she was seen was in or around the beach. But I'll say one thing for her mother, boy, she is one more persistent woman. Holy moly, man. She has gone after this guy with a vengeance, and good for her.
And wasn't there some weird stuff, like she ended up dating that fella from Colorado whose daughter got killed, the little
right
queen? John Benet Ramsey. That's
Ramsey, right.
She ended up hooking up with the Ramsey guy after she dropped the Twitty dude.
Yeah, she's from Mountain Brook area.
Right. And so that was a huge story around here because, I'm one of those kids that went on the senior trip and, hell, I was intoxicated the whole time. Somebody could have killed me with a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
put me in a puddle of water and I drowned.
Yeah, but living in, I lived in Belize for 16 years, and the one thing I always thought about tourists was how damn stupid they were. They'd come down there and try to buy drugs or get completely out of their mind in a foreign country, around a lot of water and boats and everything else. So those of us that own resorts, we spent a good bit of time just watching the damn tourists that they didn't get in trouble.
didn't fall off the end of your dock and drown.
Yeah, I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
Well,
man.
anyway, Peru has approved the extradition of Jordan Vandersloot for his alleged crimes related to the disappearance of the 18-year-old American student who was in, where were they, Aruba? The Dutch colony of Aruba.
Correct.
And of course his father was a federal judge, and we know how that shit works around here, don't we, guys?
Well, yeah, but
colonial, it's 10 times the level.
Right. And Peru, I'm really kind of very surprised that this could be pulled off between Peru and the United States over this whole thing. I just wouldn't have believed that you could do that, because he's already incarcerated. He's already incarcerated for another murder there, and they have to agree to all of this just for him to become subject to the charges. But you can be sure this is going to be front page news when he arrives.
But Peru, believe this or not, is much more lenient in its laws than the U.S. So he will get out much quicker in Peru than he would in an American court. So I'm pretty sure his Peruvian murder, sentence is probably about to run out. So, rather than just releasing him on the street to kill the next woman, we're extraditing him to the U.S. for us
Very
to
good point.
prosecute him for, extortion.
Right. Keep his ass in jail one way or another.
As long as they can.
Right.
So, Paul, do you recognize that?
Used to kill 100 Russian soldiers.
The UAR-10 is based on the AR-10, which was developed back in the 1950s by Eugene Stoner at Armalite. But the system itself has become ubiquitous. It's the basis for the AR-15, M4, M16 family of weapons, which have been battle-tested for decades. That marksman in the clip certainly likes the rifle, and it seems from imagery from the conflict, we're beginning to see many more of them turn up in a variety of different units.
The UAR-10 entered service with the Ukrainian military in 2018 as a replacement for the Russian Dragunov or SVD. Made by Ukrainian firm Zabroya, it weighs 5 kilos and fires the same caliber 7.62 ammunition as other NATO sniper rifles, rather than the Russian rimmed rounds used in the Dragunov.
Being a semi-auto, it's probably considered more of a designated marksman's rifle as opposed to a precision rifle with a bolt action. But within the ranges that it's expecting to engage targets from 200 to 600, 800 meters, the UAR-10 fits that role really well. So in British parlance, you can liken it to the L129A1 sharpshooter in that it gives small units extra range to engage targets from which might be a little bit further out. And it also allows for a little bit more precision to put fire onto a target that you know where it is, and you can pinpoint down on.
I guess it's better than Pawpaw's squirrel gun that they've been using to fight these Russians with. But the AR-10
Ukraine had a huge stockpile of former USSR weapons, both in government hands and in civilian hands.
Right, but now they're getting armaments from NATO, so they need a 7.62. Because that's what NATO's supplying. They're not supplying the ammo for the Dragunov.
And you're talking about the ability of long distance shots. Like in Vietnam, you didn't have that ability. That was very rare. You were within 200 yards max. You didn't have people being shot 400, 500 yards. Hell, you couldn't even see 50 in some sections.
Yeah, because it was all jungle.
Right.
Then we went to Afghanistan, and all of a sudden, we were getting sniper fire from a mile away on a mountain. So, all of a sudden, snipers now became, instead of, like in a Vietnam scenario, a sniper is a little guy that's in camo who, crawls on the ground and sneaks up real close to get close enough to shoot you. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, it's somebody you can't see with the naked eye out there, shooting you, with some kind of hyperscope.
Yeah.
And of course, in Ukraine, that's all been farmed for just the Romans. So that's, pretty much open ground. I mean, there's a tree line. It's between two, fields, and you cross that field. Yeah, you're in somebody's sniper scope range for sure.
Right.
So, Paul, I found the perfect Christmas gift for you.
Yeah.
It's the Fabrique Nationale, and that's FN that made all the desirable Browning shotguns back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And so this is the new FN Hawaiian shirt. Step into paradise in the new FN Hawaiian shirt made with breathable fabric and vibrant colors. This shirt will keep you cool and stylish during warm weather. Its unique design features your favorite FN firearms, and gnomes make it a must-have for any occasion or beach vacation. Get yours while they last.
I was always of the opinion that if I'm going to wear a corporate logo, they should pay me. Not me
that's
pay
way
for
back.
my Coca-Cola on my shirt.
Yeah, that was what my old man was always about that. He said, I'm not buying anything where I'm advertising for somebody else.
I'll be glad to wear the John Deere shirt. Just send me the tractor.
All right, guys. Well, we've reached the end of our time together this week. What do you, besides the cleaning up the vomit off the sidewalks tomorrow morning in Fairhope from the steak cook-off, is anything else going on this weekend, Mr. Rip?
That's just one night, right?
Yeah, it's just one night.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, I mean, that is a pretty big event. I mean, it's plastered all over town. And so, no, I don't think, Mother's Day, of course, on Sunday. Don't forget.
Don't forget the flowers.
Right. And don't get it confused with somebody calling you a mother or something. We're talking about real mothers here. So, happy Mother's Day.
Well, Brandon, how about you? What you up to?
We're just writing articles for Monday. As you're aware, we did pass legislation in the state Senate to get us 7 more judges in the state. Now, the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Parker, told me they need 21.
Wow.
But we're going to get 7, 4 circuit and 3 district. 2 of them are coming to Baldwin County.
How about that, Paul?
Thank God. I hope I know who one of them is going to replace.
Well, we're gonna have 1 circuit and 1 district. Well, and our district judges have a tremendous amount of responsibility, and they really don't have time to handle these additional responsibilities that have been put on them by the presiding judge.
Correct.
And it's, as far as the judicial economy in Baldwin County is kind of a punchline, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, we got to get geared up here. We're building a 910 bed jail in Bay Minette. That thing's going to have to be filled up.
And a new justice center.
If they don't get more judges, it's going to be filled up with people awaiting trial because there's no judge to see them.
That's right.
That's why they're in jail. They haven't been convicted yet.
Yeah, right.
All right, y'all. Well, have a good weekend, and don't forget to send something to your mothers.
All right. Have a good one. Happy Mother's Day.
Have a good week.
Later, guys.